Welcome to the Mentor Ubuntu podcast. Our guest this episode is Ahmed Ali, hailing from sunny Sudan, undertaking an MBA, in love with the journey and not the achievements gained along the way, exemplifying how, with nothing except determination, discipline, and deliberate practice, we can all win. Ahmed, it's a pleasure to have you here. Please tell us about your story and your journey.
Thanks, Shai, for the introduction. As as you said, I came all the way from sunny Sudan, and I would say it is pretty sunny actually. I've moved to the UK 7 years ago to do my postgraduate studies. I did a, a master's degree in power systems engineering in Scotland, in Glasgow. And then I've moved to Manchester, where I work now for Siemens as a project manager building offshore wind farms and working in the energy sector in general.
Yeah.
As you said, I'm in love with the journey. I am not the person who is kind of exemplified everywhere in the social media who's achieved something, and I'm here to brag about it. So that's me.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Ahmed. That goes, I guess, beautifully into our topic for today, where we're going to talk about being a good community member. And of course, Ray and I are part of the Mentor Ubuntu community, and you joined in with that this year. So I suppose the first question would like to ask you is, how would you describe community?
I did some kind of research because I'm not very big on the definitions and the Oxford Dictionary what says about stuff, but looking that up in the last few days is the definition that comes up is a community is just, as you might expect, it's a group of people who care about each other and they share a common goal. What I slightly disagree with on that definition is that a community is not only to achieve a goal, because within that definition, that you could say also a company is a community, or a charity is a community, or as someone said that he picked up a salad from the shop, and on the back of the salad it said, "Join our community on Facebook." That's not a community. It's not just a group of people who share a common goal. I think it is a group of people who care deeply about each other's well-being, and they are there to look out for other community members rather than just only themselves. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, I think when we spoke earlier, we had this idea about how you could actually then break down a community and almost look at it from 4 different perspectives, with how people would come together and the kind of support, or how you'd get to care deeply about someone. I think it was that you'd have the psychological perspective, you'd have a philosophical perspective, an economical perspective, and you could also then boil it down to a sort of historical perspective when it comes to community. So I guess using those lenses, if we start with your thoughts, or some of the thoughts you might have on the psychological perspective for other people who are looking at the community they have around them, how would you describe some of that, the psychological aspect?
Yeah, I think most of your listeners, Shai, will will kind of be aware of what is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and in there you'll have the need of belonging uh, as as an actual need for a human, for the well-being for a human being. So communities can provide you with that. So this is one of the function of the community,
Yeah.
is to provide you with that sense of belonging, that need of belonging, so you can function well in other areas of your life.
So,
So yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, I was just one word that really, struck out to me with everything you said is belonging, belonging. And like everywhere you go, even if you're, new to an environment, it's that thing of like, I'm here by myself, but I want this kind of connection of belonging. So the question I have is that even though you came from Sudan, gone to Scotland and Manchester, what has your belonging be? What was it first in Sudan, and then that transition for you to have your belonging in Scotland, and for you to have your belonging in Manchester, and what was it as well in terms of men talk your belonging? So I just want to find out. I'm intrigued because I love that word belonging. So I want to
Yeah.
find out what your transition and journey was for belonging.
Oh, that's a really good question, and actually takes me back to look at my kind of journey from my childhood. I've moved countries quite a lot, and I've grown up in Saudi Arabia, then moved to Sudan at the age of 14, and then I lived for some time in Dubai, and then came to Scotland, lived for a while, and then to England. And every time I moved somewhere new, there was always this uh, kind of driving force for my behavior within the new community, which is that force was just actually pushing me to kind of trying to fit into that community. And that need just, it occurred to me later on in my life, that need just stems from the fact that it's just a basic need. It's just, it doesn't have a kind of logical kind of causation to it. It's just a need, just like you need food. You don't need to reason why you need food. And so every time I moved somewhere, that was the driving force. The problem that I found when I came to the UK was I was always able to integrate well in the communities that I found myself in. But coming to the UK, that wasn't the case. It was, and it is still difficult kind of integration. And I don't know. I'm still thinking about why is that the case, and it might just coincided with the with the evolution of the social media and the way people think of communities. So I was reading this article the other day, and someone had a good kind of definition to uh, w- uh, a view, let's say, of what is happening. He said that a community was something that you were born into in the past, and as you grow up, you navigate your way around the community, and you find your place within that community. You define yourself in relation to that community. And but now, with with the evolution of the social media and the accessibility of like-minded people, that concept, um, people reverse that kind of process. So they develop an identity and then try to find a community that fits their identity.
Mm.
And I think that is that is the revolution that is happening now. It's not necessarily a bad thing, not necessarily a good thing. It's just the way it is. And yeah, so I think that is the difficulty of integrating in the community in my stage, in the current stage of my life. I don't know if that capture your your question, Ray. What
No,
do you think? What do
no,
you
no,
think about that?
no. It definitely made sense. I mean, for me, it was just I was trying to because again, every day you meet people from different walks of life, so it's always intriguing to kind of find out what your journey looked like. What kind of challenges you had in terms of integration and things like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you know that makes absolute sense. So
Mm,
yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean because
mm,
I've also been in different, you might as well say, pockets of communities where I've had to integrate, adapt, and things like that, and see where my belonging and where my needs are as well to kind of affiliate myself with them or just place myself so I can it's that thing of feeling at home so you can just
yes.
relax and know you're with people that are like-minded as well. I mean,
Yeah.
what would you say, Shai?
Same, similar to yourself, I guess. I've grown up in a different context to the UK. So I grew up in Zambia, and one of the main differences I saw is how you come to that sense of belonging, where when you're, say, when I was growing up in Zambia, you don't always see the world in the way that you'd see it if you were growing up here. Of course, it's different. Just like I'm sure if you're growing up in, you said Saudi and then Sudan and you said Dubai.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you come here. The way that people meet and interact seemed very different when I moved. Even just the way you hang out, you have fun, which changes the way that you would integrate because it's almost
Mm,
like where everyone does a similar thing, whether it's culturally or it doesn't even have to be culturally, because you could be in the UK and move schools or move to a different area and it's completely different. Like you feel like you can't settle in, or for whatever reason, you don't feel like you belong there. So I think, yeah, it resonated a lot, some of the things you were saying, and that idea of feeling really lost, because some people refer to it, I guess, as a culture clash where there's just this immense difference in how people behave and what they do compared to the way that you've done things before. And the UK is its own machine, man. The fashion is different to a great extent. I mean, it has to be with the kind
mm.
of winter you experience here. And I think, I suppose I might go back to the question Ray asked you. What were some of the things when you were transitioning from these other places, whether that's Saudi, Sudan, and Dubai? What were some of the things in those contexts that allowed you to feel like you can belong and to integrate? I know you've mentioned social
Mm.
media, but does that mean maybe the people there were the culture is such that you meet up and you talk, you have coffees together compared to when you move to Scotland, which is not so sunny compared to Sudan, but very beautiful if you catch it on the right summer day. What were the differences that allowed you to feel like you can belong in those other places versus here, so that maybe we can draw a parallel to just how people feel
Mm.
like they can belong in general?
So one of the things is in all these places there is kind of cultural similarity between them. So there is, as soon as you kind of start interacting with the community in there, you kind of feel the undercurrent that is moving the society,
Yeah.
and you kind of easily you are easily able to identify uh, where can you fit and what can you actually contribute to the society. So it is kind of easy to kind of have kind of self-appraisal of you can provide and what is missing, and then adopt that role.
Let's
Where
get straight into it. Can you give me like a bit more description? Yeah, come on now. This is mental, right? So let's talk. Is this
Don't be shy. Don't
everyone?
be shy.
Everyone here looks like me. So like when you put it in this context, is it look? Everyone looks like me. There's certain shade. Cool. I know I don't look like I don't stick out. Whereas when I come to the UK or something, boom, I'm the odd one in the room, just based off of
possibly,
appearance or accent. Like what were
yeah,
the
possibly,
things like, or these? You're saying you know a bit more what to do or how to behave. Like what were some of the things
yes.
you know that you have to do in those contexts that perhaps aren't clear when you move to this context?
Um, it is a bit difficult to draw examples, but what I meant is that uh, you kind of sense in people behavior if their behavior is kind of an easy example, if their behavior is a pro-social behavior or uh, not a social behavior. But when you come to a completely different context, you kind of still it's difficult to kind of discern if some behavior someone exhibited is kind of a behavior that is praised by the society or not. It's just it's difficult without having the context to define. And because of that, you just kind of uh, uh, stand still observing, try to kind of discern the the context from behaviors of people. Um, it, it, I don't know how to come up with an example, but uh, let's say the usual kind of British politeness thing, saying sorry whenever you kind of almost touching someone in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of difficult to know if that is actually politeness or there is some kind of passive aggressiveness within that
Yeah.
saying. So it is difficult for me without knowing what does that behavior kind of exhibit to adopt it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know this is the most terrible example, but
No, no, I think you're coming on to these more finer and nuanced points about the culture that we're in. Because when you
yeah,
mentioned something like passive aggressive, that is a phrase or a term that I heard much used here. But in Zambia, you
mm,
don't really get that. Like people are just more upfront with their communication. And
yeah,
when you bring that mindset here and you communicate as you would have there, it is seen very differently. It is seen almost as too aggressive, covertly aggressive, like, whoa.
yeah, yeah,
And you're perceived a certain way. Whereas from your mindset, is it modality of operation? That's how you operate.
yeah,
But here it is, the choice is, it seems better to be passive aggressive. And that
yeah,
can mess with you. And this is where I think for
yeah.
a lot of, if we're talking
That's true.
about specifically, say, Black people, where we end up having to, whether it's referred to as, code switching, we're watching what we're saying, or we
Mm,
just downplay our own tonality, physicality, emotions, because you become aware that that's not how everyone else is doing things. And every time that I
oh
do
yeah,
it, they sort of react in an adverse way. And I want to integrate, I want to belong, and I want them to accept me. So you start to mimic it. You almost bump someone
yes,
and you say sorry. It's like, I never used to, but now I do for no particular
yeah,
reason. Because sorry for me is you've really hurt someone or their feelings or you've done something wrong. Not,
exactly.
oop, just bumped you a little bit or my basket bumped your basket. Oh, sorry, sorry. It's overly polite. And I think it's
Yeah,
not just, I mean, because even people from certain European countries say you apologize too much when you're like the British would apologize too much. So I'm intrigued by how that affects the mental state. I think we'll come into that. What I'd like to hear a bit more about is I want to refer to it as maybe community currency, because in the different contexts that you would have grown up in, and I think that I grew up in, the economic factor is there. People know who's got money, who doesn't, and that sort of thing. But I feel like there is more value placed on certain behaviors that you exhibit just as a community member. I don't know if you would agree with that, or if you observed that.
Would you kind of rephrase your question, because
Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure if I captured the.
Yeah, so I'm looking at, I say I wanted, in my head, I'm framing it as community currency. So like the things that you do or the behaviors that you have as a community member that make you valuable within that community. And whereas, let's say a big part of Western society, it might be that it's more the economic side some of the times.
Oh yeah.
It's about what you've got, how much you have, where you can go, that sort of spending thing. Whereas in some of the other contexts, it's not necessarily about that. It's a lot more simple definition or simple example, right? You come over here. One of the things is we've got to go to the pub. We've got to meet up at the mall. A lot of things are tied to the economic side.
Yeah.
Like you need the money to do these things to be a community member. When I think about being back home, a lot of it is down to, I'll come to your place. Yes, there's the economic side and let's go to the bars or whatever, but a big part of it was, I'll come to your place, or we just meet up and we go walking. And there were these other things almost not related to the economic, just related to more values and behaviors. So I don't know if if you saw that.
Yeah, and I think that leads us to the kind of the economic view of the community, where the stark difference between society in the UK and the West in general and the East and Africa is that everything here has been marketized, if that's a good word. So we are in a market-based economy. So everything was given a money value, a currency value, a pound value, and everything in that way is kind of transactional. So people adopted this mindset of, if you give me something, I have to give you something in return, whether it is money or something else. So this is the mindset, whereas this is not the mindset back in Africa. Something that captures that very well, even public institutions like hospitals and stuff, although they are free, but they are still transaction. We pay taxes for them. Everyone kind of know that. Whereas in Africa, the hospital is still not in, let's say, the collective conscious of people. So when someone gets ill, it is the entire community that comes together and help. Someone will bring the medicine, someone will bring the food, someone will stay with you to chat with you and talk to you and entertain you, and someone else will do that, and someone will do this. So the entire community will come together to help the sick and ill. So the responsibility for getting someone well falls within the community. And that's how the community operates. Whereas here, no, it is transactional. You will have to give something concrete to get back that concrete care that you get from hospital or whatever, or all public institutions for that matter. So that's it's a basic difference between the market economy and, let's say, traditional kind of economy, community-based or society-based.
I like that. I like phrasing it as the market
Mm,
economy and the community economy. It brings to mind that quote of, or saying that it takes a community to raise a child to some
mm,
extent. But I really,
mm,
I'm sure there's obviously people here and communities here who will also look out for you and everything like that if you're not well. But that emphasis on, unless you've been paying your taxes and unless you've contributed in this financial way, you're not entitled to the care. And the care is very much the responsibility of these professionals.
mm,
When you described a situation in which if you're ill, someone from the community, one person will come and they'll just help you smile and talk to you. Another person will come and they might bring you food. Another person might come and bring you medicine. And it
mm.
changes this idea of everyone around being concerned for your well-being and contributing in their own way, which goes
Yeah.
back to the definition you were trying to give at the beginning about a community being people who care deeply about one another, which again I really like.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I think if we, like Ahmed said, if we, we can literally put a fence between it. So, in terms of Africa, the culture there is all that togetherness. It's all that community. It's all that. And even if you go further back into history where, before colonialism, it was indigenous people were all, gathered. Any person is sick is that you go out, everybody as a tribe, you basically go out, find the necessary, whether it's, natural herbs and things like that, bring it back to make sure you pass it on to the next person. They, mix all the herbs and ingredients together, feed that person, look after that person, take turns to make sure that at the end of the day, it's a unit, it's an enzyme. It's like everybody's working in sync to basically help each other, because it goes also back into, that proverb that I always live by, the African proverbs. It's all about making sure that if we're going to go far as a community, we all need to stick together. And, when you go into the Western side, and especially from when you go through that transition, you leave you leave Africa, you come into the Western side, you're right. It's very transactional where, you're pretty much feel that you're siloed to yourself. However, in saying that, I think this year, because of COVID, I think there's also been a transition in terms of it,
Mm,
because as much as everybody's been siloed to each other, you've actually seen, because you are isolating in your house, there's people that aren't able to go out because they've got health issues and things like that. You've seen communities being built, people that have most probably lived next to each other for so long, now have a line of communication. They're asking each other, "Oh, I know you're in bad health, or you brought it to my attention. What can I do to help you? You know what? Don't worry. Let me go and get your shopping." Because at the end of the day, it's all that, caring. It's like, look, it even goes back to, religions and things like that. You look after your neighbor, treat your neighbor how you want to be treated at the same time. So I think as much as COVID this year has been bad, it's also created a sustainable community. And it's also allowed us to dig deep within ourselves, so we can basically go through the backlogs of everything from memories and connections and things like that we don't really have because it's so transactional. And that's also been brought to surface on social media platforms where people are seeing that, and for me it's heartwarming. I'm like, wow. It's like, that whole that transactional thing is still there, but even more, it's coming to surface that we all have that togetherness here as well. So, no matter what race you are, who your neighbor is, no matter how bad they've been or whatever, kindness always is a killer in terms of defeating whatever it may be. So that's my outset on in terms of
mm.
that whole, economy and, transactional thing. I mean, does that make sense to you guys? I don't know.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense to me, and I think it's good because it highlights we're not necessarily discussing this and going, Africa good, UK bad, like because all of these places they're pretty much melting pots, if that's the right phrase.
Yeah,
Like there's
yeah.
so many people from so many places already here, so the cultures sort of bleed together. But it's just to some extent, sometimes it's the weather. So like, hey, we can't walk outside and hang out here the way that
Mm,
we would. It doesn't lend itself to that naturally to some extent,
mm,
and various other things. But I think it's good because it's emphasized how when push comes to shove, when things are not going well overall, the human instinct is to pull together and to see how you can help the other person, regardless of where they're from or anything. And I think that's a beautiful thing about the UK or anywhere in the world. And I think for the people listening, because the whole idea with, I guess, this episode, why I found it fascinating is because you, Ahmed, have been through these different communities in the sense of living in different countries. And while for some people it might not be as drastic as moving country, it might just be as simple as moving to a different area, trying to change their friendship group, or obviously we're saying here's the Men Talk Ubuntu community. So if you wanted to find other like-minded people or people going where you're going or trying to do things you're trying to do, go ahead. But you might not necessarily feel
mm.
like you belong in that community just yet because these are new people. You don't
Yes,
know how to behave, what to do. So
yes.
what are some of the, I guess, best strategies for you that have enabled you to integrate with other communities?
So one of the lessons that I value the most is that you are always somewhere in the journey to the full belonging to a community. So don't get discouraged because you still haven't got your place within a community that you wish to belong to. You you kind of have there is a certain element of being uh, to deserve your place in a community, and that comes from the contributions that you make to that community. So yeah, so that's the lesson that I've learned so far. I might still not feel that I fully belong in here, but I know from my previous experiences that I am somewhere in that journey, and uh, one day or another, I will get to a point where I find my place within that community, where I can contribute the most to the advancement of the whole society.
Fascinating. I feel like there's a underlying question that we might not be asking, and I think we're making, well, at least I am. I'll speak for me. I feel like I'm making a lot of assumptions about you just being okay and getting here. I feel like
Mm.
underlying all these different transitions and moves and getting to here has been maybe some hardship and
Oh yeah.
moments of, I don't know, not feeling amazing, right? So a big part of the conversations we tend to have, especially with Ray sometimes, are around mental health. So when you're going through these different transitions and you're moving to these different countries and having to readjust and find another place that you belong, even till now,
Mm,
I mean, you're talking about you're doing studying and all sorts of things
mm.
going on and just the normal everyday pressures. The question becomes just what is your kind of maybe what's your mental health story, right? Like,
Mm. No, that's a good question. Yeah, it is a really difficult journey. Like I can't think of anything more difficult than trying to integrate in the society because at some times it doesn't feel like it's worth it, especially when you are changing your ways to fit in. You know that feeling where you are somewhere and around people who don't look anything like you, and you start uh, behaving in ways that you haven't. behaved in before, just to fit in. You feel that little kind of feeling of embarrassment, I would say.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it is not an easy process. You try and you fail and you try again and you fail and you try again and you fail, and within that journey, the most rewarding thing is the self-discovery. So deep inside you, you kind of tap into powers that you didn't imagine you have before. And I think that's the beauty of it.
What's a power you sort of discovered about yourself?
Um, an easy one is ability to learn cultures,
Hmm.
and it's just amazing. And as I speak to you now, I have close friends from at least 20 countries. I can now go into any of these countries and I have a place where I can stay and kind of live the local cultural experience. I have no problem with that now. And before coming here, I didn't know that I have that.
So, you know, 20 people that you know from different countries. Wow.
At
I wish I
least.
could have 20 people. I'm doing something wrong. I need to learn from you, clearly. The expert. No, I'm obviously intrigued as well to just, delve a little bit deeper as well. So in Sudan, I mean, when it comes to men and mental health, like if you could, paint the picture, because again, I don't want to assume, because I know in
Mm,
Africa, when it comes to mental health, it's more case of like, oh, it doesn't exist, and it's more associated to for you to be in a crazy person unit, some sort of
mm,
institution where you're basically, tied up and things like that kind of thing.
yeah, yeah.
So, what's mental health in Sudan, especially for men there at the moment? What's the general? Is there any taboos or anything like that?
There is definitely taboos, and seeing both sides and living in both sides, it is difficult to kind of explain it now because the way people look at mental health over there is completely different to what people think of mental health over here. Um, an example is, or it's not an example, it's just the way of life doesn't allow for people to kind of either go into either extremes of being really well mentally or really not well mentally. People are always hovering in the middle. And the reason is because people live so close to each other. Whenever someone exhibits kind of divergent behavior, people pull them back. You don't have the time for yourself that is afforded by how people live in the West, in the UK, for example. And that was one of the difficulties for me transitioning to here because I have always been around people 100% of the time, except when I'm asleep. Where here it's kind of I came here by myself. It might be just an special case, but still kind of this is the general way of life. And for that reason, mental health is viewed differently. When someone actually get an actual serious mental health problem back in Sudan, the way people deal with that, uh, uh, it's similar the way people deal with someone who's schizophrenic or have an actual physiological problem.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I definitely appreciate
So,
there's a better acceptance and understanding of certain things here, and there's
yeah.
more of a questioning of it and introducing it, especially to younger people and younger children. Because I remember when I was growing up young, when certain people have a certain condition, I mean, even conditions such as epilepsy, there were all these associations made with it. And I don't know, let's say one being something like the person is possessed, demonically possessed or something. And that's why they're going into, they're having epileptic fits. But obviously you come here, you learn it's a neurological condition and it can be managed, and you get a different understanding. So the stigma attached to mental health isn't present. And I think it allows you to open up more. I don't know I don't know if you've ever hit certain low points or found yourself engaging
Oh,
with
definitely.
any mental health. Have you ever engaged with any mental health professionals or services that are provided, say here?
Yeah. So a few years ago, 3 years ago, I was playing football, and someone tackled me and I broke my knee. And that was only 8 months after I moved to Manchester. Other than people from work, I didn't know anyone. So, and I don't have family here. I knew no one, but I was in a very good mental state. So I thought, okay, I am definitely capable of going through this by myself. And I was. But the problem is that it turned out the injury was a bit complicated. So it required 3 surgeries over a long period of time. And within that period of time, I had to kind of have a lot of painkillers, and then the side effects of the painkillers started. With the side effects, I was missing a lot of work because I would have uh, 2 months after surgery on a sick leave, and that kind of affected my progress and kind of hampered that drive for growth. And so I kind of started developing uh, a few mental health issues. I started to have anxiety attacks whenever I am around people, and I needed help at that point. So that's where I engaged with talking therapist. And the good thing with that situation is it is kind of one of those things that just require the time and the patience for it to pass. But that experience kind of opened my eyes that uh, although sometimes you might feel invincible because you are mentally strong, the shit could hit the fan.
I like that. I like that. Very true. Very true.
Get your umbrella.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And this is one of the things when if you are part of a community that actually cares about you, you wouldn't have to get to a point where you kind of say, okay, I have a problem here and I need to seek help. Someone else will, from the outside, will tell you, okay, you are sliding into something and we need to stop that. And this is the power of a community.
And could I ask, so when you engaged with the therapist, what were, like, say, it took patience and it took someone maybe asking you certain questions that you don't normally ask yourself. What was the most, I don't want to say surprising, but what made the biggest difference when you engaged with that professional? Like what aspect of coming into contact with them or working with them made the biggest difference for you or made the biggest shift?
So yeah, so those anxiety attacks that I was experiencing were manifesting themselves in real life danger situations. And once you start talking through these kind of anxieties, you start seeing the no logic behind them.
Yeah.
So just by talking to someone and talking out loud your thoughts, you kind of start listening to them and see how illogical they are, and that just can just vanish them. So the talking therapist that I was seeing, I don't think she did anything other than listening to what I was saying.
Mm.
And if that was provided by a community, I would say, then
You might not have needed
that
it.
might have you might have not needed, might have needed much less time, because you are only bounded with 50 minutes for the session with a therapist.
Wow. So all you had was 15 minutes with a therapist.
No, 50,
Oh,
five
sorry.
zero.
Oh, right. Okay. All right.
Still the same.
Yeah.
And what if you exactly? Time flies when you're having fun. That's the, you know. No, that makes sense, especially when you've got a lot to lay out. Because what you know, from my experience, and I think this also resonates with a lot of people I've spoken to, is that when you go through something and you, especially being a man, you always think, oh, do you know what? I'm a man. I can do this by myself. I can do this. You go through that. Yeah, I'm doing it by myself, but without even realizing, in the background, your mental health is obviously creeping and getting to you, and it's programming you differently, and it's also bringing anxiety and things like that. Whereas if you had that community to have that community to speak to on a daily basis, to check in, things like that,
Yeah.
you know, your mental health that also feeds into your happiness would be completely different.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's also important to make sure in terms of the community, you've got that channel of communication, because again, it's just about sometimes just listening, leaning, learning on each other and that kind of thing, and just leading each other when you should. And like you said, you know, if you had that at that time, it would have been the case someone told you, Ahmed, come on, you
Exactly.
know,
Yeah.
this is not like you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's one of those things. We live and we learn. We live and we learn.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think so. A key message for anyone listening at that point is, like you said, get the things out of your head. Like when they're just in your mind and you're thinking about them, they will often seem much worse than they are. And it's only when you write them down or you articulate them, you actually speak them out, that you see, almost like you were suggesting, how ridiculous they are. There's a man called David Goggins, who I listened to some of his videos. I've read his book, and on one of his videos, he suggests on the days where he's feeling not so great and the little negative voice is telling him what not to do for whatever reason, what he does is speak it out and record it, and he listens back to it. And he's a bit more extreme than most people, right? So he'll basically boil it down into how pathetic that voice sounds. And when you hear it, you know that you're better than that. You know that you're stronger than that. But when you hear it, it shows you how this shouldn't be a voice I should entertain in my head, because we all know what we're capable of. But when you just kept it in your head, it seems so big, it seems so powerful. But when you speak it out, you go, no, that's ridiculous. And like you're suggesting, look for the evidence, or just do something that opposes it as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I like that. I like how we're going with this. Let me ask you, I want to ask you a few questions just to see where you go with this, right? The first question for me that I'd like to ask is, who taught you how to shave?
Nobody.
You're right, Shay. I've been looking at this, ever since I met Ahmed. I was like, yeah, that's a good shave. It's either a really good shave or really good jeans.
uh, we don't have this Western stuff, so nobody teach you how to shave.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a Western thing either. But I asked the question because in
Yeah.
my mind, when you reach the age that you can shave, it's one of these rites of passage, or you're becoming a man essentially. And especially for some of us with the kind of hair that we have, there is a particular way that you have to do these things. And I guess what it's boiling down to is I'm trying to find out who were the male role models or guides who were around at the time that you were becoming a man when I asked that question. Because when I think of it, I didn't really, I'm in the same boat. No one taught me how to shave, and I'm still trying to figure it out. We've got YouTube now, but I think it speaks to, because there's a lot going on in a young man's mind, I think at that stage in his life. So if there was no one around to teach you how to shave, who would you have spoken to when you had anxieties about the changes that were occurring?
Actually, yeah, that's a difficult question, because that kind of, you would expect that I have someone as everyone else, but the sad reality is is that I have gone through those stages in my life without having that role model. My father was kind of an absent a little bit. He was working somewhere else while we lived somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have that. So I had to rely on myself. So from very early stage, I kind of looked around, found no one, and I said, okay, I have two choices. Either I moan about it or just accept it and be the role model for myself. So I think that's how it worked out.
I think it worked out well. I don't think there's a right or wrong way, but I think it worked out well. And I think that's one of the part of the reasons I'm quite passionate about, say, the mentor Kubuntu community, working with all sorts of different generations, just to start some of these conversations. Like there's a 13-year-old kid right now trying to be like, I wonder what I'll do. And there's a 50, 60, 70-year-old man who's also going, I don't know, I wish I had other friends who look like me or a community like me. And just, it can enrich your life in so many ways. So, okay, I think it's a powerful one. Interesting one. Okay. Then I was going to ask you what you think the best thing about being Black is. Let's see what you have to say about that.
The best thing about being Black. I don't think of it this way.
Yeah.
Or I haven't thought about what is the best thing about being Black before. I have thought about the best things about being someone like me who has this background and history, and I have some advantages that nobody can have. So I come from the intersection of from the Arab world, the African world, the Muslim world, the Western world, and I am at the center of this of all these cultures. So I can be anywhere, be comfortable in Europe, in Asia, in Africa. So
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you said that, you didn't know obviously how to say that. I was reading an article, I think this was a couple of weeks ago, by, I think her name was Sharia Agwar. Don't quote me on that. If you wanna double check with me, let me know and I'll find it for you. But she was basically highlighting that in Africa there are no black people.
mm,
There are no black people.
mm,
However, an African person goes into the Western side, USA, Europe, anything like that. As soon as their feet touches the ground, they're black. And it's that whole mind concept of, you being a black African person or an African person, you associate yourself as being human. That's it.
mm,
You
mm,
don't see race. You don't see anything else.
mm.
Anyone coming from a different country, different color, you, as an African person, you just see a person.
Yeah.
But for some reason, as soon as you go to those countries, you're obviously made to realize and no, it's forced upon you that, yeah, you're human, but you're black. So I
Right.
can I can understand the fact that you don't really think much of it, and this is why for me personally, I think this year more than any other year, I have done like enormous amount of soul searching in terms of who I am and my identity and things like that. Because even as a black person, there's a lot that's been suppressed over time without even us realizing, and you're obviously in a way kind of encouraged to kind of suppress all of that. So I've done a lot of searching. I'm still doing a lot of searching, but it's fulfilling me in terms of who I am as a person, because it goes back to that saying of like, if you don't know your past, how can you ever, foresee your future or even trying to pave your future? So that's my outset on in terms of
Mm.
that.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I look at it. When I arrived in the UK, I was Ahmed, who's from Sudan. But then someone started to identify me as a black person, and I was like, I've never identified myself as with that. And for me, it is kind of a Western view of things. It is how the British person defined the world, that there is a black or there is a white. Or for a black man in Africa, there is no white or black. It doesn't define you, and this is one of the beautiful things about Sudan. Sudan is, as I said, is in the intersection of a lot of cultures. So we have like the whole kind of color spectrum of people. So I grew up with white people, like not as white as you would find here, but they are from Turkish origin or Greek origins, who have migrated to Sudan a long time ago. And then you have the really dark skin, and we all share everything together. There is that racism based on there is racism, don't understand me wrong, but that racism defined by your color is not there. There is racism defined by where you come from, the country itself. It's something like the north-south divide that you might find in the UK. But that color-based racism is not the same as what you find here.
I would agree. I think when you come here, it is made a bigger deal. I think it was last year I attended it was a Black Writers Conference. For one of the reasons, almost similar to Ray, I've been doing a lot of soul searching, in particular the last 2 years. And going there, I didn't know what to expect because I never necessarily feel or felt the need to identify as, Black man necessarily and all this. I'm a guy. I'm Shemenda. That's always the way I have identified myself. And having conversations with some of them, it was because for them, they had this. A lot of them grew up in the UK or in the West, and they had the experience of going, say, to Africa or to somewhere in the Caribbean and finding everyone else is exactly like you. And because everyone else is exactly like you can't, the term is almost, I don't want to say redundant, but you couldn't describe me in a classroom now. Let's say you could go, oh, Shemanda, he's the black guy. Oh, which one? The tall one? Not the short one. Okay, someone knows who I am, right? But in a context where everyone looks like me, you can't do that. Like you can't go, oh, it's a black guy. Oh, everyone's black here. What do you mean he's the black guy? And
Exactly, yeah.
it highlighted to me the way that they saw the term and the identity of black and why it was such a bigger issue at the time than it ever seemed to be for me or in my mind, because I'd grown up where you describe me as me, and like yourself, it's very multicultural. Like there's white, there's Asian, there's Indian, there's all people you can imagine, because Zambia as well was a bit of a migration spot. Like a lot of people from many different cultures came through there. There's a lot of intersection going on. And so you just, even when I was here, if I was trying to describe someone, their color was never something that came to mind initially. I would always try and describe things I'd spoken to them about, oh, the person from such and such, the one who's got the sister who's studying this, the one who's got, because almost going back to the community thing, you want to get to know the person, and that way you care about them. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't even know where I'm going with this anymore. Ooh, I got I got all passionate about it. But I think what I will say is one of the main other things I will say about the UK that I didn't necessarily have before is there is also some greater tolerance for an acceptance. I'll say acceptance. Acceptance is a better word. There's a greater acceptance of people from all walks of life and who have all manner of, I don't want to say proclivities. They're into all sorts of different things. Similar to the thing you pointed out, like when you come here, you do feel like I can do my own thing and no one cares who I am or no one's checking. Whereas back home, it's more like a small town feel. Everyone knows everyone knows what you're doing. And so when you come here, it's like, I'm going to be who I want to be. I'm going to love who I want to love. I'm going to do what I want. And for the most part, most people leave you be. There's obviously the other people who won't, and that's the same everywhere. But being in the UK specifically opened me up to accepting a wider range of people and appreciating getting to know the person, almost like we were talking about with how mental health issues or certain diagnoses can be perceived a certain way, whereas they're not perceived that way here. They're accepted. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different balance. In the balance of things, what for you do you look for in a community overall? Like say right now or moving forward, what are the key things? Because I mean, you could have moved to the UK and gone, I'm going to seek a community of people from Sudan or from Saudi, or you could have chosen to do that. But I feel like you've left yourself open and you're seeking a broader community, or you've been seeking a broader community. So what do you look for in a community?
So the number one thing that is I look for in a community is the opportunity for growth. And this, I think, goes a bit in the philosophical direction, where I feel we are essentially a species that long to growth. such as any other species or anything else. So what is the purpose of a tree? The only thing that you see a tree moving forward with is it is growth. And I feel we are the same. And within a community, if I find that venue for growth, I think that's the main thing that I would look forward. If that growth is aligned with serving that community, this is heaven, I think.
Wow. What's the, when you say serving the community, what's the kind of service that you want to do or be remembered for?
Could be as simple as the contribution to the growth of other members of those community. So that's why I like this podcast, because I feel that it is actually going to drive forward that growth within a community. And I really admire you guys for doing this, and I hope this is something that is going to continue and grow in itself to become that thing.
I hope so too. Let me
And
ask
I'm sure you will do.
No, sorry, I don't hope so. I don't hope so.
You know so?
I know so. Yeah, I know so.
That is
okay?
that is the spirit.
No,
Yeah.
we don't hope.
That is the spirit.
Hope is for suckers. You hear? Yeah, they're listening.
We left hope back in 2019. Yeah,
That is perfect. Yeah.
Oh man. Let's see. I've got a final question.
Yeah.
It's a simple one, but we'll see where you go with it. My final question is, what do you wish men talked more about?
What do you wish men talk more about? When you specifically talk about mental health, if I said, let's talk about mental health,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to me that is all encompassing to all the issues that men will face. So as we go about in our lives, we will be faced with challenges. And just accepting that people have challenges and you have challenges, and just let's discuss them, whether they are work related, family related, soul searching related, whatever. Let's just talk about them.
Just the normal everyday challenges. Yeah, I feel.
Just let's talk. Yeah,
I feel like we need to market this as.
Just let's talk about the little things.
You heard that, Ray? So this is the oasis along your journey. Yeah, stop by the Men Talk Ubuntu podcast or community, and it's your oasis. I like that.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, I mean, we didn't even go into as much detail about all the great things that you've done in terms of pushing yourself and having the drive to pursue a career of sorts, you know, and shape yourself into a man, a good man, and the man you want to be. I'm sure we'll have many opportunities to do that in the future. For
Definitely
us, I'm sure what's most important right now is to just take a moment to appreciate you for making the time to actually be part of this conversation and supporting with changing the perceptions of Black men and mental health into a more positive way by living as a great example. So yeah, I had a lot of fun. We really appreciate having you on here with us. It's a great conversation. I learned a lot about you that I didn't know before.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's a great. I had a lot of fun. It was a great conversation, and I'm sure the conversation will continue.
Oh, definitely. We're honored, grateful for you to have taken your time out to, just be with us the run up to Christmas. I know it does get busy. You're not alone. You're with your community, so you've we've got your back. You've got our back, so it goes hand in hand. But yeah, I really do appreciate you know, embarking on the journey with us ever since we hiked up Snowdon, and I'm sure it wasn't even a journey, it was a movie. That was a movie. That's just the start of the movie, or should we say a whole range of episodes that we're going to embark on. But yeah, I'm humbled. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Great. And I think if people wanted to find you or connect with you, they will not find you on social media, but but they could. What's the best place for them to find you or connect with you?
You could reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am Ahmed Ali. So if you search that in LinkedIn, someone with the title project manager at Siemens will come up, a black person.
All right.
So that will be me.
Fantastic, Ahmed. Again, I can't thank you enough for being here with us. And I just, I wish you all the best, my friend. I look forward to seeing you soon. And stay connected.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Thank you, guys, and enjoy the rest of the Sunday.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Cheers, guys.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed creating.
Don't forget to follow, like, share, and connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to our latest episode and listen to any you missed. And tune in next episode.
Take care.